Good morning, Year 6. I hope you're well and have had a good weekend and are ready to start your lesson today on looking at the fifth chapter of Private Peaceful. As we go through today, we're going to be making some inferences and looking at some of the vocabulary elements within the story. Okay, so we're going to begin by thinking how we'll be successful. We're going to identify what a question asks us to do. We're going to consider what we think a character believes. We're going to identify why they might have had this belief, and we're going to support our evidence, support our point with evidence from the text. Just a quick element of recall now. Who did this? Who moved in with the colonel? Who had a funeral for their pet? Who shouted at Joe? And who stopped the peaceful brother getting a hiding? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 questions. 4 answers, please. 1 minute, go. Pause the video. Okay, who moved in with the colonel? It was Grandma Wolf. Well done, Axel Shibir. Who had a funeral for their pet? It was Moise says Joe, and he's quite right. Who shouted at Joe? It was the colonel. Well done, Natan. And finally, who stopped the Peaceful Brothers getting a hiding? It was the Peaceful Mother. Mother Peaceful. She went and spoke to the colonel, didn't she? She went and spoke to him and explained to him that there would be no beatings. They would be cleaning the hounds out. They would fulfill that element of their punishment, but there would be no beatings. She explained to him, she made the point, and she won the day. Okay, guys, we're going to read through some pages now. We're going to look at pages 61, 62, and 63. And as part of that, we're going to think about the elements of the story that are developing, where we're looking at those relationships, and we're going to try and draw some inferences which relate to those points. I haven't seen a fox while I've been out here. Just sorry, guys, we'll just move so that you can see that first element of this. You'll have the printed version out as well. I haven't seen a fox while I've been out here. Before I start, though, I'm thinking 24 minutes past 12. Each of the chapters have been like that. They've got a time to them. They're showing the progression of something. I wonder why. Let's look at those later on. I haven't seen a fox while I've been out here. It's hardly surprising, I suppose, but I have heard owls. How any bird can survive in all this, I'll never know. I've even seen larks over no man's land. I always found hope in that. Again, this is that point where it's current day, but not current day for us, but current day for the narrator, where the narrator is when they're conceiving all these ideas, when they're thinking of all their ideas from their text. And we can see something now, can't we, about their location? We can link this to our history. I've seen larks over no man's land. No man's land then. Where are they? Well done. So they're going to be in a battle, aren't they? Somewhere probably linked to World War One, due to the fact they're in no man's land, due to the fact that we know elements from when the pilot tried to take off and the spluttering nature of that plane. We know that it's nearly more than 100 years ago. This book was set, so we know an element of that now. What we're going to think about now is, as we go through the rest of the page, we're going to think about the vocabulary after we've conceived what's going on the page. He'll know, Charlie whispered to me in bed at dawn, thinking now Charlie's committed that problem, hasn't he? He's committed that offence, really. He's stolen something. As soon as they find Bertha gone, the colonel will know it was me. I won't tell him where she is. I don't care what he does. I won't tell him. That determination of Charlie. He doesn't care if he's going to be in trouble or worse. Rather than just in trouble, he might be in big trouble. Doesn't care about that. He's determined. We've seen that before with how he reacted when Mr. Mullins was hitting him. He doesn't care about what people perceive of him sometimes. He cares about doing what he thinks is the right thing. Charlie and I ate our breakfast in silence, hoping the inevitable, so there's no way of stopping it, the inevitable storm wouldn't break, but knowing that sooner or later it must. Big Joe sensed something was wrong. Sensing is quite an interesting word there, isn't it? Because we know that Joe can misunderstand what's happening sometimes. He can act in a way that isn't acceptable for some people's perceptions, like when he was at his father's funeral. Big Joe sensed something was wrong. He could always feel anxiety in the air. Got this idea that Joe's got almost like a sixth sense. He's extra attuned to certain things. He was rocking back and forth and wouldn't touch his breakfast. So then Mother knew something was up as well. So you see the knock-on effect of one person affecting another. When she was suspicious, Mother was a very difficult person to hide things from, and we weren't very good at it. Not that morning. Is Molly coming over? She asked, beginning to probe. Probe's a great word here. And we'll have a look at probe, because probe is a word which we know from looking through that text is just there. It's placed similarly, it's placed quite closely, sorry, to the verb of asked. So we know that she's not been asking already, because asked hasn't appeared yet. We know that only just now mother became suspicious, and mother then probes. And probing can mean that somebody's looking at something, somebody's poking something. So it's got one syllable in probe. So you ask, beginning to probe. And it's to poke, to put under pressure. If you're probing something, you're really trying to get to the bottom of it. You're probing it. Whenever the police probe suspects about burglaries, they check their alibi. So if they're asking questions of a suspect when a burglary has been committed, they'll check whether they were in the place that they said they were. So if you said that you were with mum, I'd go and ask your mum and double check that if I was a police officer. Synonyms then, words which mean the same as probe: inquire, to review, to check. Okay, so those words mean similarly the idea that you're ensuring that the evidence you're given is correct. So Molly's attendance is being checked upon by mother, but really she's trying to check what's going on with the boys, why they're not talking at breakfast. Antonyms then, the opposite of probing, is when somebody states something, they open up. You don't need to probe if somebody's opening up. You don't need to if somebody's opening up. Okay. Second page. There was loud and insistent knocking on the door. You could tell at once it wouldn't be Molly. It was too early for Molly, and anyway, she didn't knock like that. Besides, I think she could already see from our faces that Charlie and I were expecting an unwelcome visitor. So we feared it was the Colonel. Mother invited him in. He stood there glaring at us, thin-lipped and pale with fury. I think you know why I've come, Mrs. Peaceful, he said. He began. No, Colonel, I don't, said Mother. So the young devil hasn't told you, he was shouting now, shaking his stick at Charlie. Big Joe began to whimper and clutch Mother's hand as the Colonel ranted on. That boy of yours is a despicable thief. First of all, he steals the salmon out of my river, and now, in my employ, in a position of trust, he steals one of my foxhounds. Don't deny it, boy. I know it was you. Where is she? Where is she? Where is she? Is she here? Mother looked at Charlie for an explanation. He was going to shoot her, Mother, he said quickly. I had to do it. You see, roared the Colonel. He admits it. He admits it. Big Joe was beginning to wail now, and Mother was smoothing his hair, trying to reassure and comfort him as she spoke. So you took her in order to save her, Charlie, is that right? Yes, Mother. Well, you shouldn't have done that, should you, Charlie? And again, on this page, thinking on this ranting on that I can see, the context within which that sits is the way that the Colonel is addressing people. So the Colonel doesn't just say it it's not just on its own. He's ranting on is where it's a continuation of what he's already said. So the young devil hasn't told you, and then he's carrying on. And we can see that he's a despicable thief. So it's ranting on. It's this continuation of this ranty behaviour. We can see the effect it's having because Big Joe's whimpering. He's really upset, and Mother's having to comfort him. And we can see then the other elements of ranted on. And you're going to complete this element of the vocabulary work, please. Carrying on to page 63 then. No, Mother. Will you tell the Colonel where you've hidden her? No, Mother. And I found this really interesting that Charlie won't tell Mum, won't tell the Colonel. He knows he's in trouble. He kind of knows he's done wrong, but he thinks it was a good choice to do wrong, if that makes sense. He's made a choice that it's better to do this one wrong and save the dog than it would have been to do the right thing and not steal the dog if the dog then got killed. So because of that, he's being determined. Charlie's showing that personality trait again, and he won't now. He won't now tell Mother or tell the Colonel where the dog is. Mother thought for a moment or two. I didn't think so, she said. And that for me is really instructive. It shows. So Mother says, I didn't think you'd tell me. Now, Mother and Charlie are close. They're really close. As a family, it's a lovely image, this family all together. But he won't tell Mum. And Mum knew he wouldn't because Mum knows that there's some things Charlie thinks are really important. So although he's not going to tell her something, it almost shows that she knows her own son. It shows how well she knows him. I didn't think so, she said. She looked the Colonel full in the face. I like that idea. It's quite a powerful idea. You look somebody right in the face. It shows that you're not backing down. Colonel, am I right in thinking that if you were going to shoot this dog, presumably it was because she was no use to you anymore, as a foxhound, I mean? Yes, the Colonel replied. But what I do with my own animals, or why I do it, is no business of yours, Mrs. Peaceful. I don't have to explain myself to you. Of course not, Colonel, Mother spoke softly, sweetly almost. But if you were going to shoot her anyway, then you wouldn't mind if I were to take her off your hands and look after her, would you? You can do what you like with a damn dog, the Colonel snapped. You can bloody well eat her for all I care, but your stun stole her from me, and I will not let that go unpunished. Mother asked Big Joe to fetch the money mug from the mantelpiece. Here, Colonel. Here you go. She said, calmly offering him a coin from the money mug. 6pence. I'm buying the dog off you for 6pence. Not a bad price for a useless dog. So now it's not stolen, is it? I really like this. Mum's really clever, isn't she? Mother Peaceful is really clever. Because what she's done here is she's turned it around. Rather than being something that the Colonel can be angry with, which he is still going to be really angry, she's now made the point. She's bought it. You can't accuse him of stealing now. There's obviously still going to be consequences. The Colonel was utterly dumbfounded. He'd gone there really furious, ranting, and he's utterly dumbfounded, we learn. He's utterly dumbfounded due to the fact that Mother has addressed him in this way. She's twisted what he said slightly. He said the dog was useless, so why is he angry about it? He said he was stealing. Well, if I pay for it, it's not stealing. He's utterly dumbfounded because people don't challenge him like this. I'd like you to complete the vocabulary work for the utterly dumbfounded. That's the vocabulary work for you to do. Then we're going to think a little bit about elements of our inference skills. What evidence is there on page 61 that Tommy and Charlie are aware there is going to be trouble? Let's look back to that page, and we can see that they were sitting in silence, and that shows they were nervous. And that's an okay answer. But if I really want to delve down into it and show my understanding as a reader, I need to state that the meal, chronology of the meal comes after Charlie's told Tommy about how he's stolen the dog. And this demonstrates that they're both aware that there's going to be repercussions, there's going to be punishments, there's going to be sanctions for Charlie. They don't know what they are, but they're scared of the consequences. What's key in the answer here is we don't just say that they were sitting in silence. We say about the chronology. We try and delve to really evidence our understanding from the text. The chronology of the meal coming after Tommy and Charlie have spoken about it explains why Tommy's not talking as well. 4 questions for you to answer relating to the inference about the text. I'd really like you to think as well about Mother. Okay, I think it's starting to get a developing understanding of how she's a really pivotal and quite an influential character in the story who shows a real wiseness to her. I also like you to think about why the Colonel, when he banged on the door before he even started ranting, he expected Mother Peaceful to know, Mrs. Peaceful to know what was going on. Why do you think he did that? What was question 3 is looking at what was prompting Charlie not to say, just have the dog, have it, it's here. And then there's that phrase about him being dumbfounded, utterly dumbfounded. But what does he do that shows he's dumbfounded? What physical attributes show the Colonel was shocked? So number 4. So have a think about those questions on this page, please. I look forward to reading your responses. Thank you very much for listening today. And think if you're not sure about the depth of detail that we've got in that first answer. So we've got the point and then the justification from the text. Thank you again, guys. Look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye-bye.